So good evening, everyone who's joining us here tonight for tonight's webinar on being mindful about anxiety. We're really wanting to understand patterns tonight. My name is David Corcoran. I'm the EQ Professionals Manager for 6 Seconds in Europe. And tonight I have a very special guest, Beril Barlas, a mindfulness coach. Welcome to this webinar. So Beril, would you just like to share with those who are watching now and those maybe watching later on YouTube, just a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, hello everyone, welcome. So happy to share this space with you tonight and to connect with you. I am joining this webinar with the head of mindfulness coach and with the topic of anxiety. So we will go through from there, and I live in Vienna together with David. We sometimes meet and share professional workshops together. And also now we have a first time a webinar, which is really nice. And like I write in the chat, I am originally from Ankara. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Beril. And just to put I'm not Viennese myself either. I'm originally Australian, but I am part of the 6 Seconds Network. And so let's jump into a little bit about 6 Seconds for those who are joining us for the first time. So we would like to see 1 billion people practicing the skills of emotional intelligence by 2039, which means that through our awareness, our intention, and our purpose, we offer a range of ways to connect with people. And you see there a map around the world. We do have things all over the world happening. But of course, we also have a number of different ways in which you can connect with us through our tools, through our assessments, reports, and so forth that we see here. 27 different languages. So chances are there may be a tool or a book or a product that's available for you as well in other languages. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to know more. We do have a range of assessments, and that's really a core of what we do, as well as opportunities for training. But this is also tonight part of community. And my slides seem to be struggling a little bit. So I'm going to just ask Beril to mention just a little bit about your background with 6 Seconds and what you've done. And so in addition to being a mindfulness coach, you've also done a few things with us. So please share for a moment.
Yes, so I begin my journey with 6 seconds with UAQ, so unlocking AQ, because it's the first workshop you can do if you want to have a quick understanding of emotional intelligence. And after this, I was very interested, and I continue with 6 seconds practitioner and 6 seconds assessor paths. So as David explained, in 6 seconds there are also assessments. And with this path, you could you understand the competencies fully in more detail in the practitioner one. And in the assessor one, you have the ability to run this assessment yourself, assessments. And these are both, these assessments can be used professionally or personally. Later on, now I am still continuing my journey with 6 seconds. I am doing a AQPM, so more like a business consulting, more like business performance metrics assessments and consultancy training. So this is my journey with 6 seconds. And in the journey, I became a network leader also. So this is why we are meeting with David and doing some AQ cafes in Vienna and also online.
Great. Thanks, Beril. And thanks for helping me there. My slides were unfortunately on some sort of transition mode. So I'm going to come back to those slides now. So as Beril said, she's taken a number of certifications, which is fantastic. And that may be something that you'd like to do in the future as well. And if that's the case, then please do get in touch. And I'd be happy to talk with you and explain more about what we do. But tonight's really about if you're maybe a coach, a professional in some way, a manager, an HR professional, maybe you'd like to get some tips and some ideas around anxiety and how they're connected to patterns and what we do around that. So as I mentioned, we do have these different ways to connect with us, and we really value community. So many people tonight joining us from around the world, but especially in parts of Europe and Turkey, I see here as well. So you're all very welcome. And if you're watching on a little bit later, you're also very welcome to connect with us in some way. What we really understand is that emotions drive people and people drive performance. And so when we think about those emotions, what emotions are you feeling on a daily basis? There really could be a mixture of emotions. But what we want to consider tonight is this idea of anxiety. So already I'm going to ask you in the chat, those who are here, to think about anxiety and what does it mean for you? So how does it show up in your body, or how does it affect you in your life? So I'll give you a moment just to pop something in your chat if you've got the time to do so. We would love to hear some of your thoughts as well. So thanks, Ilaria from Italy there, joining the call. So it usually affects your sleep. Absolutely. Yeah. Those moments where during the day we're maybe high on anxiety, cortisol's running through our body can make it very difficult to sleep. Thanks, Patricia. So rapid heartbeat and a lack of ability to concentrate. That's definitely what we notice in our body, our physiology there as well. React instead of respond. Thanks, Anka. Absolutely. So we don't take the time to pause. Perhaps we go straight into a fight or flight mode. Can be very distracting and detrimental long term. Absolutely, Greg. Yeah, if we're not understanding that it's a constant for us. And I think in this world, we're just about to release at 6 seconds our State of the Heart report, which details a lot of information about our model, but what we're noticing in the world of emotional intelligence right now. And I can't give any of the fresh statistics away, but I'm sure you'll see that we're living in this more chaotic world where we're always distracted, where we have these anxious moments building up in us all the time. So that in the long term is not good for our collective society either. Tension in your neck and shoulders, yes. So we feel those physical sensations. And Menza, thank you. Overthinking about what could go wrong, 100%. Yeah, we often strategize and overthink about where we're going. I actually have a book that was recommended to me called Stop Overthinking. Therapist endorsed, it says 400,000 copies. So if you're an overthinker, this is a Nick Trenton. I haven't read the book, but if you do, get in touch with me and maybe we could have a separate webinar on this book as well. So the picture here, you see a lady where she's sort of masking here, where we see this smile, but what's behind the smile? This could be something that's very similar to anxiety, where we even put on a face, a happy face, a positive face. We go into work, but underneath that, behind the idea here could be anxiety. So what is anxiety? We've come up with a definition. I'm going to invite Beryl in a moment to share with us some ideas around mindfulness and anxiety. But I just want to give you a couple of 6 seconds ideas when it comes to mindfulness and anxiety. This I've gotten from our website, so www.6seconds.org. It's a term used both for the feeling of generalized unease due to unknown or persistent threats. So let's just consider that. Unknown or persistent threats that keep us in our fight or flight response, if you've heard of that popular idea. And it's a feeling where perhaps there's an unknown aspect. And I like that word persistent. So things aren't, it's not just a one moment thing, it's happening over and over. Also, and here, it's also a clinical mental health disorder tied to overproduction of cortisol and the difficulty returning to a calm state. And of course, if you need to see a mental health professional, this is a webinar. This is not meant to be in any case some sort of therapy. So if you do need that kind of support, if the second situation is more your situation, then we really encourage you to find a mental health professional in your city. What we're thinking about and focusing on tonight is the difference where we might have feelings of stress in our lives. We all have stress and stresses that then lends itself or leads into anxiety. And how can we stop that pattern? Sometimes anxiety becomes a pattern. I know for many years in my own life, I've woken up and felt anxious and then tried to do various things that have helped me to come back to some kind of a neutral state, a calmer state, as it says, but sometimes they can persist. And, that's where over time, that can be very debilitating, of course. But I wanted to invite Beryl's thoughts in here. No, so not only is an EQ professional, but Beryl is a certified mindfulness coach. And so now we can really look at things from her perspective. And I just realized I had one last slide, Beryl. I found this cool picture online. I think it's actually from Australia, where I'm from, because all the campsites and the signage looks like this. And for me, I know anxiety can be about future things, as was mentioned also in our chat here, what could go wrong or what could be a challenge, but it might also be anxiety about things that have happened. The stress of the meeting this morning, or not getting to work on time, or something I said to someone in previous weeks as well. So we can think of it on both ends of the spectrum. The question is, though, what can we do about it? And how can we understand it as a pattern? So Beryl, I'd like to hand over to you.
Can we go? Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Okay, so I want to just talk about anxiety a bit more, where David left. So you already wrote about in the chat the physical sensations. So I can add more to this, like shortness of breath, the sensations of anxiety, known sensations, increased heart rate, stomach butterflies. And if you think about this is quite similar to excitement feeling, which is also looking forward to a future event. So here, it's also important to see these differences. So this is where emotional intelligence or mindfulness takes into place. Do I understand my feeling? Am I really anxious? Or maybe am I excited? So to see this is really important. Or for example, David said maybe you need to see a mental health professional, or to see that, yes, I have a consistent anxiety, which I really need support. To see this difference is very important. This is what I want to highlight first. And then I want to talk about a little bit from nervous system perspective. If the anxiety or stress, if this is an adaptive response or it is an unadaptive response. What do I mean with this? Even anxiety is a healthy emotion. There is no emotion which is not healthy. In the end, in our biology, we have this feeling for a reason. We have this emotion to warn us, to inform us, to tell us something. The problem is if our nervous system is stuck there. So although the circumstances no longer require, if I am still feeling anxious, then this is a maladaptive situation because I no longer need this emotion. So here the important term is flexibility, adaptability, and how quickly can we come back to our baseline. So all of us feel anxious, all of us feel stress. But the important question is, did I get a stressful mail in the email in the work, and then I come home and I am still having this stress with my children? So am I giving a right response to the situation, or am I reactive? Do I have patterns? Because if we are not coming back to our baseline flexible enough, it means patterning. We said we will look into the patterning, we will look into habitual patterns. So this is patterning if I cannot come back to my baseline. And what is patterning? What is it from? It could be from our genetics, it could be from our culture, childhood, long-term stress, or maybe trauma. So this is, I want to open more, give more detail about anxiety a bit before we move on. And then let's come to mindfulness now, maybe enough about anxiety. Then let's look at the definition of mindfulness. Mindfulness is, there are many definitions, but this is a very simple and easy definition. Cultivating a capacity to remember, to be present, and to pay attention to one's momentary arising experience. Here, this momentary experience is very important. So when we hear being in the present, what does it really mean practically? It means I am aware of my thoughts, I am aware of my emotions, I'm aware of my body sensations, impulses. So all together, not only my thoughts, but my whole experience as a whole, a living person in this world. Then, but in the moments of anxiety, imagine we are mostly, or maybe you can also write if you are like this. I am like that. I am mostly in my thoughts, and all of us are. If we are anxious, and thoughts move very quick, and it is easy to get lost in the thoughts. So this momentary experience means watching sensations, observing moment-to-moment change, and more allowing attitude rather than aversion. In the day, like in the picture David showed, you are sad, but you try to look good. So you are you have aversion, it means. So it is not this, it is not aversion, it is not grasping a happy moment also. It is without judgment, accepting, allowing whatever is there. And maybe it is contradicting why it helps, but as the webinar proceeds, we will see that. So I can give you example like naming emotions, for example. This is also part of having a perspective, really understanding your experience. Scientific studies show that if you name your emotion, this already regulates your nervous system and already allows you to see a larger perspective. So it's proven that this sensory awareness really helping you to see the larger perspective. So I will finish with a nervous system knowledge. Like in the language of nervous system, if I summarize everything I said, through practice, we increase our capacity for the emotion to feel them again. So anxiety don't keep you in fight, flight, or freeze mode. Instead, you can learn from them and they can expand you, they can transform you. This is the ideal target, we
So
can
we're not
say.
stuck anymore in that fight, flight, or freeze, but we can move through that with mindfulness. Yeah. This is probably a good chance to ask those who are attending tonight's webinar, just in the chat, have you done some mindfulness practice before in your life? It'd be good to know, for Beryl, to know who's done some training, or you maybe have attended a course. I know I attended a mindfulness course 2 years ago, Beryl. I didn't tell you that. Here in Vienna, not with you. I wish I had done your course. So you can tell us more later about your course and what you're doing as a mindfulness coach. But I recognized that in the moment, it was a very powerful, there was techniques given, and maybe you're going to share something with us a little bit later tonight. But I did find that, of course, doing it in a set, we were in a yoga studio, it was nice. We could sort of come into that space. But of course, as you're saying, it's about when we recognize those patterns in ourselves, maybe that maladaptive anxiety and stress you were talking about leads then to, what can we do as we're doing it. So I haven't seen anybody write in anything. Have you done any mindfulness? Have you done any mindfulness training yourself? Let us know as well. Ilaria has said something here. So yes, I've attended a wonderful course with Plum Village Buddhist Center recently based on mindfulness and meditation. Ilaria also said before that emotions are messages, and recognizing emotional patterns is so relevant. Mindfulness increases this awareness, she understands. So as you were just saying, Beryl, it really is that combination of being or being aware, I think, in that moment you mentioned there, understanding what could this anxiety be telling me? What's the message here as well? Cool. We see some other responses. So meditating where possible, Greg, and Mensa has also attended several training sessions in Thailand. Wow, with Buddhist monks. That sounds amazing. And Anka has done a forest bathing course. Wow, amazing. So some different ideas or also as well. So yeah. So next, Beryl, I think you've got some more to share with us about mindfulness in terms of the neuroscience.
Yeah, we can continue with the next one then. Yeah, okay. So I will go deeper with mindfulness now, give a few more concepts about it. So if you look at the definition, through purposeful mindful attention, one becomes skilled. Here the skilled is important and competent at paying attention in a mindful way, while simultaneously weakening habitual and unconscious patterns of distraction, rumination, self-criticism, judgment, and the ability to see the things as they actually are is developed, which is impermanent and interconnected. So first, I would like to explain this impermanent. What do we mean with impermanent? This means joy and pain are part of life, but all is temporary. So in mindfulness, impermanency concept is very important to understand, that we know whatever we are living will pass, will change, will evolve. Nothing will stay forever. Like also our lives, of course, like if you go even deeper. Then the other concept, very important, is interconnectedness. So this is feelings, interconnectedness of what? It is feelings, thoughts, impulses, body senses are all related. So this means their presence is dependent on one another. So this too is very important. And then the third concept I would like to mention is cultivation. Mindfulness needs to be cultivated. So this is dose specific. In order to get the benefits, you need to do a little practice every day. You could relax doing it one day maybe, and it is also nice, but it won't bring the benefits we are mentioning today, like in order to have the full benefit. And this correlates with neuroplasticity in neuroscience. So the understanding of mindfulness, which the value of cultivation, is also supported by neuroscience. Neuroscience says repeated behavior adapts the structure and function of neural structures and networks. And this is called experience-dependent neuroplasticity. So these concepts I would like to underline in the short mindfulness definition.
That's wonderful. I know with our 6 seconds methodology, we often talk about, starting with when the neurons that wire together or fire together, wire together as a phrase, when I get it right. So that idea that and you actually see sometimes now there's some neuro pictures showing the way neurons with their little dendrites start to really wire together. And that can happen at any age, as you said. So I think that's a really cool concept that we don't pay enough attention to, that this repeated dose, as you say. So it would be great to do a course at one point, but then what are we doing, I guess, every day after that? So that's where I personally dropped off. I didn't do the techniques. I didn't maintain them. So that daily dose, I guess, was not giving me any results because I wasn't doing it. So that's really, really nice to bring up, Beril, for us. So great. Great. What else do we need to think of in terms of our modes, perhaps? Would you like to mention a bit more about that? Because I know I've often heard this idea of doing. I do a lot, but then someone will tell me, well, what about being? In the moment, can I be? So I know you've got some thoughts on that for us.
Yes, yes, thank you, David. Okay, so so there is scientific evidence, neuroscientific evidence, which is supporting mindfulness, as we know. And there are so many studies, but for this webinar, I choose one, which, as David said, about modes of mind, being mind and doing mind. So we can say that cognitive scientists identify two distinct modes of mind, doing mind and being mind. So the symbols in the left side belongs to doing mind, and the symbols on the right side belongs to being mind. I won't go through the whole idea of it, but just a few introduction concepts again. So doing mind basically is very much associated with what we talked about. So rumination, worry, anxiety, and depression. And doing mode, cognitive science identified this as discrepancy-based processing style, which is going from point A to point B. And this is a problem-solving skill we use all day. And this is facilitated through cortical structures that support a capacity for abstraction, language, imagination, and reflection. And because we become so effective at solving real-world problems through this mode, through problem-solving mode, then we begin to approach our emotional problems with the same mode because of plasticity again, because the repeated behavior becomes our automatic behavior.
Mm.
And doing mode, it's a very good mode, of course. We do a lot of things with this, but it doesn't help us when it comes to emotional problems. And due to neuroplasticity, we become expert ruminators. And like in the right side, the emotional problems are different. They are non-linear. And so there is no obvious pathway to their solution. But in the discrepancy mode, the specialty of this mode is it will repeatedly try to solve it. Until it is solved, it will try to solve it. So this is what we call rumination in the end. All these never-ending thoughts. And mindfulness practice can be understood as cultivating the being mode of mind. So being, how does that work? As we highlighted before, this works with sensations, and this mode perceives thoughts as mind events. And in mindfulness tradition, we have sixth sense, and the thoughts are considered as sixth sense. Like what is the sound to my ear are thoughts to my mind. But in the on the other hand, in doing mode, all thoughts are real. Maybe you will ask, what are they not real? I mean like this, we have conflicting thoughts. One day I can have a good mood and I can see myself so beautiful, and one day I can have a bad mood and I could see myself so old. Which one is correct? But without this mindful ability, you would go with all the thoughts, although they are not correct. This is what I mean like this. Of course, there are also correct thoughts, but you should have a choice. Then you can also choose your thoughts. This is a freedom you have in the being mode, but not in the doing mode.
I love that. I love that. So it's a bit like when we talk about our rational and our emotional sides in some of our brain profile models. And so the doing mode seems very rational, very, very focused. But I like what you said, Beryl, that our thoughts are a sense. So like we taste things, we hear things, and we sometimes choose to hear, choose to ignore, right? Or I choose to taste something, I go, oh, I don't like that. I won't go and drink that thing again or eat that thing. And so the taste can be affected. So it makes sense then that with our thoughts, that not all of them need to be acted upon or considered, that some will just pass and move on, and others we might keep and want to hold on to. But they are really just like a passing bus or a cloud, that we don't have to, not all of them are real, as you just said as well. I really like that idea. Oh, wow. That's
yes,
cool.
I find it liberating also. I find it life-changing. This is why I want to add here also to mention, although it is a bit difficult concept.
Yeah.
And if I continue, like we said before, the second symbols, then the doing mode is especially focusing on past and future. So if you see yourself thinking, and if you see a time perspective, you can understand you are in this mood. Because the being mode is focused on present moment. If your thoughts, but our thoughts mostly are about either future, what things didn't happen yet, or things that already had happened. But my only power is in the present moment. And we most of the time forget this. So another meaning of mindfulness is remembering to be present. Like this is why it is important. And the third symbol is about that doing mind is an autopilot mode. It comes automatically. So if you are doing a routine task like driving a car and you have some thoughts in the background, this is doing mode. And being mode only works with intention. So this is a purposeful state. You have an intention to be in the being mode, and you practice, you pay attention, you give yourself some space. Only then you could experience being mode. So as long as you don't have an intention, you are keeping being in the autopilot mode.
Yeah.
And I want to finish my words with to say that discussion on mindfulness really helps us to understand a bit. But the best is to practice, experience, to have the benefits, like we said. So maybe we can also practice some now.
Yeah, I just want to ask everyone though a question of our those watching on. So, what percentage of the time do you spend doing versus being? So, I'm sure everyone might say, "Well, I do a little bit of this." I would wholly admit to you, Beryl, that I probably spend 90% of my time in the doing mode and only 10% of my time in the being mode. So even, I've had a full day of work. I've come now to our webinar. I'll go do the kids after this, take the dog for a walk, and then honestly, it'll be probably 10 to 10 at night. And I'll go, right, I'll sit down for 10 minutes
Yes.
and then it's bedtime. I try to go to bed
Yes.
between 10 and 10:30. So
Yes.
I'm
Maybe here,
honestly
yeah,
not
maybe
spending
here.
enough time.
Yes, maybe here I could say this is make it more easier. It could be very simple also. So you said you are taking your dog out. Uh,
Yes.
you could be mindful when you are taking your dog out too. Or you could be mindful when you are playing with your children too. Or you could be mindful at work too. So it doesn't mean we need to do sit meditation to be in the being
Mhm.
mind. But
Okay.
of course, formal meditation
Mhm.
helps us because of neuroplasticity to have this habit.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the idea is, of course, living it in our life, like bringing it to our life.
Mm.
So moving it from formal to our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give an example of brushing your teeth, for example, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to take long because little moments in the day, a little moments everywhere in the day will make a big effect on you. I know. Like if you are having a shower or doing a brushing your teeth, as long as you have an intention to pay attention to your sensations, you could experience being mode. Or
Mm.
you could be thinking, I am sure many people thinking they are meditating, but meditating is not about relaxing. Meditating is about being focused. Many people maybe sit on the meditation cushion and daydreaming.
Mhm.
Then they are not in the being mode either, for
No.
example.
So those thoughts are just
So you
taking
cannot,
over. Yeah.
yeah, so you cannot say it from outside. I could be seemingly working, but I could be in doing being mode
Yeah.
also, right?
Yeah, that's cool. And this is where you mentioned before this dose specific. Mindfulness is dose specific. So these what you're talking about with the toothbrush or with the dog or with small activities. And Ilaria said here, peeling an apple or dishwashing, going
Exactly.
for a walk or a forest walk, I guess, like Anka said before.
Of course,
These are
of course.
moments where we're saying, right, I'm going to be present from what you've said here. I'm not in my past and I'm not in my future, which I know I just go for a walk and I'm always just in the past or the future. So I've got many reasons to be more mindful. But what we want to do now is to sort of practice a few different things in ways in which we can think of mindfulness or thinking about anxiety as well and these patterns. So maybe you're starting to already see patterns in your life that aren't serving you or are serving you, like Beryl has said. So where can we strengthen the patterns that we want to use to be more specific? So yeah. So Beryl, do you have something for us that we can do in this moment? I think in our next slide here. What can
Yes.
we do to
Can
be more be? There's a good one.
Okay, let's do a little practice just to have a taste. And we will need a pen and paper from everyone for this.
All right.
And while you are collecting this pen and paper, I begin to I begin slowly.
Mhm.
So maybe you have a challenging topic for you right now. It could be a person, an event, or a team, maybe a constant team in your life. And if you don't have a present challenge right now, maybe you pick something that happened a weeks ago. It doesn't have to be really difficult thing, just practicing something really simple but a challenge.
Mhm.
Um, so let's first practice in the doing mode. So bring this difficulty in your awareness right now. Try to focus on it and reflect on your impulses. Impulses mean what you want to do about it, what is so on the surface for you. and also your ideas about the topic, your thoughts about the topic, now or maybe in the past. And write down what you notice. Let's take a moment also. Mhm.
Mhm.
Was it enough time? Mm.
I've written some things down, so maybe others have as well. Maybe we'll just give another 10 seconds or so. People to write some things down, yeah, about a present challenge with some impulses, some ideas and thoughts. Mhm.
Okay. Ilaria said done, maybe done. Okay, we have two
Great.
benchmark.
Thanks,
Then
Ilaria.
let's experience some being mode then. Now still hold the same theme in your awareness. And then forget about solving it and what do you want about it. Just notice the effect of this situation has on you. Try to see this difficulty on you. And explore the sensations of breathing in the body now. Holding this in your awareness at the same time, paying attention to your breathing. And can you see the emotions? Can you feel the emotions, the feeling tone? Maybe you don't know the emotion, but maybe you could say, is it comfortable, uncomfortable, or neutral? And are there any body senses? Do you feel anything in the body? How do you know? How do you know you have this difficulty? And maybe there are some images. Let all this arrive, the feelings, images, sensations, without trying to changing anything, without trying to find a solution, just observe. And what do you feel now? And can you name that feeling? And maybe you can take a moment now to write down what else did you notice?
Mm. I certainly noticed the intensity of my feelings. Like the thinking about it increased some of my feeling, you know? I wasn't thinking about it before. Now I'm thinking about it.
Thinking about
Yeah,
a feeling.
yeah.
Yeah, Mensa says it's so liberating already before we come to the reflection. Yeah. Thank you, Mensa, for giving feedback.
Mm.
Then I guess we had a feeling, so we can move on to the reflection.
Mm.
So I want to ask you, how was it? How was this for you?
We have a
What did you
question.
notice?
We do
You
have
can
one.
write in the chat. Mhm.
We have a question from Fatma. So I can
Ah,
allow you to talk, Fatma, if you'd like, if you're still there, or you put your hand down. So maybe you want to share that in the chat if you've got any thoughts.
okay. So yes, if you any questions, any reflections, but basically I want to ask, how was it for you? What did you notice? And how was it for you to integrate other channels of experience together with thoughts? How was adding sensations, emotions, and paying attention to this?
Mm.
And how is it to allow and integrate our experience rather than trying to find solution or avoiding them? How did this feel to you?
Yeah. Ilaria said here, breathing in and out allows me to embrace the feelings. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I found too, my breath got harder, tighter. I couldn't breathe as effectively as I wanted to or might have at another time when I was experiencing those less pleasant emotions, thinking about that situation myself.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yes, but this is a very big awareness, of course, to see that this is mindfulness, to see how your breath is affected.
Yeah.
You don't need to change it. It is how it is. Like your breath is
Yeah.
affected, but
Yeah. Yeah.
mindful to see that.
And I know I grind my teeth. And so I started to go like this. I could feel it already. So it was like a physical trigger there that in thinking about that frustration and annoyance that I was feeling, I had the physiological
Yeah,
reaction in my mouth. Uh,
yeah.
and it was like, oh, right. So that could be a clue that when I'm in that pattern, if I
Mhm.
grind my teeth, I often keep a little bit of chewing gum here so that if I do it too often, I start to chew to sort of break the pattern a little bit. But I notice that I do it. And so, that might be a trigger point where I can realize that I'm falling into that less ideal
Yes,
pattern.
yes. It's like being a scientist on your own body, kind of. You begin
Mhm.
to investigate, you begin to learn. It's a curiosity mindset,
Absolutely.
like you experienced.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Beryl. And Ilaria said here, I learned to breathe in and out and say hello to my feeling and then breathe out and smile to my feeling. Wow. That's a really nice one too. Thank you for sharing that. And others are welcome to also share their thoughts. So before we finish, so thank you, Beryl. This has been really helpful. And maybe you've got questions for Beryl as we go through. So I just want to bring another tool that you might want to consider, less about mindfulness, but more on the side of anxiety. But it also relates to one of our two of our competencies at 6 seconds. So I'm not going to go into our KCG model in its depth, but you see it here on the screen. It has the know, choose, and give parts of our model. And if you're brand new to 6 seconds, this is all about awareness, intention, and purpose. So blue for awareness, red for intention, and green for purpose. And there are two competencies of this model that you see here that I think really relate to us in terms of anxiety. And we've talked tonight about patterns. So recognizing patterns on top of our emotions, as Beryl has mentioned, is really important. But also looking for, if we're in that anxious moment, how can we shift? And as Beryl said, come back to a neutral state. And from there, perhaps being in being mode, we can then also see where do we go to from here. So what I wanted to introduce you to this idea. And so as a definition, we talk about recognizing patterns as acknowledging frequently occurring reactions and behaviors. So maybe like me, grinding my teeth, maybe you notice something in you that you do regularly when you get more anxious. Likewise, exercising optimism is about taking proactive hope towards possibility. So knowing that we could take steps towards our own futures in some way. So, but we have to do that when we've recognized the pattern. So it's a bit like recognizing what's happening, doing something about it, and then going on from there. And one of the activities we like to think about is building a bridge from one to the other. And I asked ChatGPT, specifically DALL-E, because I now have ChatGPT 4, to help me out here. And we have an activity that we often talk about as the bridges of optimism, where on one side you see here, it looks quite dark and pessimistic. There's no leaves on the trees. These are those anxious thoughts that we might be having. Then on the other side of the bridge, we have growth, life, we have regeneration, we have movement and sunshine, perhaps more optimistic feelings here as well. And so the thing to consider is what happens when we feel pessimistic, when you feel anxious, there's stress, worried. all of these feelings are very similar. And as Beryl said, where do we feel them? And then what are the thoughts associated with them as well? These could really be driving us. And so we often feel that things start to become permanent, pervasive, and that we are powerless. So I don't know if you've experienced that in a high anxious moment. I've certainly had that in the last few weeks where I felt like everything was falling apart. It wasn't, it was just maybe one thing that was falling apart. And I thought that it was going to be like this forever, permanent, that I was never going to get any better or change this particular thing. And that, really, even with the efforts that I was putting in, I was still powerless to do anything. And so I don't know about you, but you may have felt that way before, that will I ever get there? Will I ever be enough? And so that can, of course, induce in us anxiety, but also at the same time can leave us, if we're stuck in that state, that can be very difficult. That becomes a repeated pattern if we're not careful. So what's on the other side of the bridge? Well, when we're crossing that bridge, we need to ask ourselves, do we need to take a 6 seconds pause? Can we actually realign ourselves in the moment? So we call it a 6 seconds pause, but Beryl, you had a term that was really around being more centered, being focused, being in the moment, going for the walk with the dog and not being distracted by social media or thoughts and feelings, but being in that present moment. I was just in a call with our network leaders, being led by my colleague, and she pointed out the fact that a 6 seconds pause could actually be longer than 6 seconds, but it's the thing that we do to bring us back to that moment. So I love that, the parallel with what you said, Beryl, about being and recognizing when can I get myself into being mode if I'm charging away in doing mode. And so we can ask ourselves a couple of questions when we're on the bridge. So here you see my picture, the person's on the bridge and they're facing a choice. Do I want to be more pessimistic or stay in there? Or do I want to be more optimistic? Or if I'm in optimism kind of mode, is my tendency to start to think negatively? I know that for myself, something great will happen in my life and I'll enjoy it and I'll celebrate it for 10 seconds before my brain says, but hey, hang on, don't forget, and it brings up some kind of more pessimistic thought. So we need to ask ourselves, when we're facing a situation and seeing that anxiety, how long will this problem realistically last? How widespread is the problem? So is it about everything or is it just one smaller thing? And finally, is there anything that we can do about the problem now? So sometimes we get caught up in, next month's webinar, next week's presentation, what's happening 3 weeks from now in October, will there be enough people or whatever? Whereas we can instead focus on what can I do today and even in this moment to help me, to help you. I think that's where there's this power between mindfulness and this approach to thinking about crossing these bridges. So when we get to the other side, we feel more hopeful. So maybe you've experienced an optimistic moment where things have felt much more hopeful for you. You're forward focused, you're energetic again. And so we realize that things may be temporary, isolated, and effort is possible. We can put in and do something that relieves this tension. It's just isolated to that small issue. We can turn and change that pattern of anxiety in that moment. As Beryl said, nothing is permanent. Impermanence, including, death for all of us is on the way. And so realizing that everything is temporary, isolated, and that effort is possible. So use the acronym TIE, T-I-E. Can we move towards these time moments for ourselves? And when we're feeling that pattern rising, can we make a shift as well? So here's a final quote from you, Beryl, before we finish up for tonight. If you want to share a little bit more about that with those. It says, you can only learn to regulate an emotion that you allow yourself to feel. So tell us more about that.
Yes, of course. So as we discussed, it is not possible for us to move through the emotions that are stuck without increasing our capacity to feeling them. This is what it means. And how do we increase this capacity to connect? We do it with connecting our bodies, because body is where the feelings live. And in in the language of nervous system, we said we increase the capacity for emotion to feel them again. So anxiety don't keep you in the fight, flight, or freeze mode. Instead, they expand you. And I can say mindfulness practice here is a scientifically proven tool which supports you to be more skillful. In other words, this increases our emotional intelligence through regulating our nervous system and increase our capacity to respond instead of reaction or habitual tendencies, patterns. So the aim is to increase our adaptation, to increase our flexibility in the end. And I think there was a question in the chat, and
Yeah,
maybe
feel
there
free
are
to
other
answer that. Yeah,
questions. Can
from
we
Menza there.
can we go for? I will have a look at the question
It
again.
says, is the visualization done during a meditation considered doing or being? So if one's doing a visualization during a
Yes.
meditation session or mindfulness
Yeah.
session.
Yeah, this was an informal practice, like to show exactly in a setting like this. But it could only be it could also be done in a meditation, or you can include it in your practice. For example, the optimism and pessimism bridge David introduced also could be done in a longer way and introduced into practice, because I think when we are in the doing mode, even if we see these questions, the temporary, isolated, effort possible, these options, it is more difficult to maybe respond to them. But if we are in a more calmer, more regulated state, then we will have more creative answers, other perspective to the same questions or same concepts. So all these methods could be done as an informal practice, just in 1 minute, or could be done in a longer practice. It's really based on what you need. Like in mindfulness, I didn't mention here, maybe I should say, it's not one solution for fitting all, right? We are all different. We have different needs. So it's also part of the journey that we try to find what we need, what is good for us. Maybe for me, swimming is mindfulness. For Ilaria, like being in the forest is mindfulness. So it is also so personal. But thank you for the question. So I could bridge to also this. Thank you.
So I guess we finding our own personal dosage of mindfulness in these small ways is a top tip here, and recognizing the emotions that we allow ourselves to feel when we're in those moments, and recognizing those. So it's not. I think often people get scared about this idea of having to sit down and meditate, or the concern about meditation or thinking nothing and things. It's come through in the Western style of meditation in the last, say, 50 years. But here you're describing that simple things can be forms of mindfulness when done in that way, which I
Yes,
think is great.
yes, exactly. Important is what is good for you. If you sit in a formal meditation and it makes you anxious, then it is not the right thing for you to do, right? So
Yeah.
it's also feeling, not insisting on something wrong for you.
Yeah.
But maybe there is a reason, maybe you have an anxiety problem, and maybe if you really want to do it, maybe you will do it after a period, but maybe not today. So
Yeah.
it should be really being mindful about mindfulness also, like.
Yeah.
And you could be sitting in a meditation, but you could be daydreaming also. Then there is no benefit.
Sure.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I can tell you that if you want a guide to mindfulness meditation from the questions, we will share my email also. You can
Sure.
ask me, and I can send a small guide for like an introduction to mindfulness to ones who want. Or of course, you can visit us from social media, and yes, we will also give our email.
Great.
So we can keep in touch for other questions, because I
Yeah.
see I'm mindful about time also. It's finishing.
Mindful of time, there's just one question there we'll answer, and then we'll move on to the final moment. So it's Ilaria asks, how do you see integrating mindfulness in schools for students and teachers? So I know that may be a longer answer. So is there do you see a
I
way,
didn't,
do
I
you see
didn't.
a way to integrate mindfulness into schools for teachers and students? So is
Yes,
any
yes,
work being
yes,
done there for
yes.
educators?
Yes, I think it is. I see so much similarities to emotional intelligence
Mhm.
in the end. So they could be together like we did today with David also. Because I can answer this, I am not an educator, so from school or teacher, but I could only tell from my experience. My mindfulness education helped me a lot as a parent, like gives me, and I even have a paragraph about this in my website. So I don't have a teaching experience. I don't have experience in education. I can only guess from my parenting experience that my personal view, yes, it is like as much as emotional intelligence is good, same like mindfulness, because I see mindfulness as a tool. And when we talk with David in the same concepts, in the end, we cover the same topics with different words or different approaches, but we talk about the same concepts.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you, Beryl. So just to wind things up and reflect for all of us on what we've done tonight, at 6 seconds, we have a network of people all over Europe. This is a real picture taken from our map of experts. So perhaps depending on where you're living, have a look at our website, Map of Experts. You can see here people all around the world. And Beryl and I, as we mentioned at the start, are both in Vienna, in different parts of Vienna. So this may be useful to you, but we would love you to join our network and to understand a little bit more about what we're doing. 6 seconds has been around for 25 years, so really a proven methodology. And as Beryl said, we do a lot of work in schools, universities, as well as in the corporate environment, but also with parents and families and so much more. So regularly we do EQ cafes around the world as well, where we're really integrating our methods and ideas for our community, for your community, and very much for our networks as well. So we'd love you to join us in some way, as you have tonight. And it's really been a pleasure to have you here with us. And I asked ChatGPT one last picture. I said, what would society look like if 1 billion people were practicing emotional intelligence in 2039? Because that is our noble goal. And it produced this picture for me. Initially, it had a lot of tech, and I said, with a little less technology, please, because that's also part of our mission to be sustainable at 6 seconds. And here you see this image. So, maybe you could be part of that 1 billion people with us and start practicing EQ today. Is really what we want to leave you with. And as Beryl said, so here are our details. So Beryl, a mindfulness coach there, you see her details there on screen. And my details there as well if you'd like to reach out about 6 seconds. But please get in touch with Beryl. I think tonight, Beryl, it's been really lovely to have you with us and to really think about all the ways in which mindfulness links with emotional intelligence, but to really go a little bit deeper into understanding what is doing and what is being and how we can sort of dose ourselves up a little bit with a bit more being in our lives. And as we all acknowledged earlier, many of us are in that doing mode. So finding these small ways that you've suggested, I think is really valuable. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, David. Thank you for inviting.
Yeah, and thank you to all of you who've joined us, who've attended tonight. We had a wonderful turnout of people, so thank you so much for your time in sharing this with us. And if you're watching this recording afterwards on YouTube, then very much thank you as well for getting to this point and really enjoying all that we can. So this is part of a regular webinar series that we have at 6 seconds, and whether you found us on LinkedIn or on our website, we'd encourage you to stay connected with us in some way. So thank you so much for coming tonight. And I'll stop the recording in one moment, but certainly say, emotions drive people and people drive performance. So think about your own performance by thinking about your own emotions. So have a lovely evening and thanks for joining us.